My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I'm 35 years old. Up until a few weeks ago, I thought I was 6 months away from marrying the man I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Instead, I came home to find out I was engaged to an entire circus. That night started like any other exhausted business trip return. I'd just finished a 2 week training program out of state for my job in project management. The kind of training where you live in conference rooms under fluorescent lights and drink burnt coffee while people talk about synergies, like that word means anything. My flight was delayed. My suitcase handle was sticky from something I didn't want to identify. By the time I pulled into my driveway, it was nearly 11 p.m. All I wanted was a hot shower, my own bed, and maybe a glass of wine if I didn't fall asleep on the kitchen floor first. Instead, the first thing I saw was the glow of my living room TV through the curtains. That was wrong. I always turn everything off when I travel. I'm obsessive about it. Stove off, plugs out, lights off, thermostat set, door double locked. My house is my sanctuary. The quiet box where I can close the door on the world. As I walked up the path, I could hear laughter. Two voices, female. For a second, my brain didn't process it. Maybe it was a neighbor's TV. Maybe the sound was carrying weirdly. Then I slid my key into the lock, pushed open the door, and the smell of takeout hit me. Garlic, soy sauce, greasy fried something. My living room lights were on. My coffee table was covered with open containers, crumpled napkins, and empty drink cups. And on my couch, a woman I barely recognized was sprawled out, scrolling on her phone with her feet up on my table. Next to her, tucked into the corner of the couch like this was the most normal thing in the world, was my boyfriend, Ethan. It took me a solid 5 seconds to put it together. Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes widened, and then he plastered on this too big smile. "Babe, you're home early," he said, like I'd just surprised him at a restaurant, not caught him and a stranger in my locked house. The other woman didn't even look at me. She just kept scrolling. I stood there in the doorway with my suitcase still in my hand, my brain whirring. Something felt off, even beyond the mess and the noise. Then I realized what it was. They were both wearing my clothes. Ethan was in my oversized vintage Nirvana t-shirt, the one I'd hunted down at a garage sale for $200 because it reminded me of my dad's old collection. The other woman, his sister, I finally recognized from 2 awkward holiday encounters, was wearing my Ralph Lauren bathrobe, the one I'd splurged on because I'd told myself, "You're an adult now, you can have nice things." My nice things were currently wrapped around someone who'd paid exactly $0 to be in my house. "What's going on?" I asked, very calmly, unnaturally calmly. My voice goes flat when I'm at the edge of losing it. Ethan jumped up, stepping over takeout containers like they were part of the decor. "Oh, so, funny story," he started, and I already knew it was not going to be funny. "My sister needed a place to crash for a bit, and I figured you wouldn't mind since you were gone anyway. She's going through some stuff." His sister still didn't look at me. She just shifted a little, making more room for herself on my couch. "For a bit," I repeated. Meaning what exactly? Ethan waved his hand like details were for lesser mortals. "Like a few weeks, maybe a month. She's between apartments." I stared at him. "And you didn't think to ask me first?" He actually laughed. "Babe, we're getting married in 6 months. What's yours is mine, right? Plus, it's family. You'd do the same for your sister." "I don't have a sister," I said. "But if I did, I wouldn't move her into someone else's house behind their back." His smile faltered. "Come on, Lauren, don't be dramatic. You know I basically live here." He did basically live there. He had a drawer, a toothbrush, some clothes in the guest room. But there was a reason everything legal, deed, mortgage, utilities, had my name on it, and only my name. "This is my house," I said slowly, enunciating every word. "I bought it before I met you. Your name is not on anything, Ethan. You don't get to move people in while I'm gone." His sister finally looked up. "Wow," she said, rolling her eyes. "Hostile much? He told me you were cool." I ignored her. I kept my eyes on Ethan. If I looked at her, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. "How long has she been here?" I asked. "Since Thursday," Ethan said, defensively now. "And honestly, she needs help. She's got some debt issues and—" "Debt issues?" I cut in. There was that off feeling again, a low warning bell I'd been ignoring since the first time he'd told me a story where nothing was ever his fault. He nodded. "Yeah, like 18,000 in credit cards and a car loan she can't make payments on. I told her you'd help out since you make good money, and—" "Stop," I said. I held up my hand. The room seemed to tilt a little bit. You told her I'd pay her debts? Not all of them, he said quickly. Just help her get back on her feet. Maybe cover a few payments until she finds work. Baby, we're going to be a family. Families help each other. His sister chimed in then, her voice edged with entitlement. I mean, if you're going to marry into the family, you should probably be willing to help family, right? This woman I'd met exactly twice, once at Christmas, once at Easter, was sitting in my bathrobe, eating food she didn't pay for, in a house she didn't pay for, telling me I should bankroll her bad decisions because I was stupid enough to fall in love with her brother. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Ethan asked. Calling the police, I said. His face shifted from smug to horrified in half a second. What? Are you insane? Your sister is trespassing, I replied, my voice terrifyingly calm. She was never given permission to be here. I want her removed. His sister jumped to her feet. You can't do that. I've been here for 5 days. I have residency rights. No, you don't, I said. This isn't a rental property, and you're not on any lease. You're a guest who was never invited by the homeowner. That's trespassing. Ethan grabbed my arm. Lauren, please, she's my sister. Family first. I pulled my arm free. She can be your sister somewhere else. She needs to leave tonight. It's almost midnight, he protested. Where's she supposed to go? That's not my problem, I said. That was the moment something in me clicked. The moment I realized we were standing on opposite sides of a line I couldn't step back over. His sister started yelling. You know what? You're a selfish piece of garbage. What kind of woman turns away her boyfriend's family? The kind who didn't give permission for strangers to move into her house, I said, dialing. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a trespasser at my residence, I said, staring straight at Ethan as his world rearranged itself. His sister started screaming louder. I'm not a trespasser. I was invited by someone who doesn't own the property, I said into the phone, and doesn't have authority to invite guests for extended stays. Ethan was crying now, real tears, or very good performance. Lauren, please don't do this. Please. She has nowhere to go. She can go to your apartment, I said. He flinched. I gave that up 2 months ago when you said I could save money by staying here. That part was true. I had suggested he save money by staying over more instead of paying full rent on his old place. Somehow, in his mind, that had turned into, I can move my sister in and donate Lauren's salary to Visa and MasterCard. The operator confirmed officers were on the way. 10-minute ETA. Those were the longest 10 minutes of my life. In those 10 minutes, Ethan cycled through every strategy he had. Crying, shouting, pleading, bargaining. His sister threatened lawsuits, promised she'd ruin my life, called me every name she could think of, and then she made a mistake. She stomped down the hallway into my bedroom, the one place I'd told her not to step into, and came back out holding my laptop and my iPad. If you're kicking me out, she hissed, I'm taking these as compensation for emotional distress. I lifted my phone again, hit record. So now it's theft on top of trespassing, I said. Got it. She froze, clutching my devices. Put them back, I said. Make me, she snapped. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find 2 officers on my porch, one older man and a younger woman. The older one nodded politely. Evening, ma'am. You called about a trespasser? Yes, I said, stepping aside. That woman. I pointed to the sister. She was moved into my home without my knowledge or consent while I was away. She's refusing to leave and just attempted to steal my electronics. The older officer looked at Ethan. Sir, do you live here? Ethan straightened, wiping his face. Yeah, I'm her fiancé. The word felt wrong in my ears now. But is your name on the deed or lease? The officer asked. Well, no, but... He turned back to me. Ma'am, is he authorized to invite guests? For short, normal visits, yes, I said. Not to move people in for weeks or months without asking. I was out of state for work for 2 weeks. I came home to find his sister living here, wearing my clothes and being told I'm expected to pay her debts. The younger officer stepped toward the sister. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and leave the property. I'm not leaving, she said, crossing her arms. I have rights. You don't have residency rights after 5 days, the officer replied. The property owner is asking you to leave. If you refuse, you'll be arrested for trespassing. This is discrimination, she shouted. She's doing this because she hates his family. Ma'am, the older officer sighed. This has nothing to do with family. It's about property rights. She didn't move, just flopped back down on my couch like they were bluffing. All right, the younger officer said, pulling out handcuffs. Ma'am, stand up. You can't arrest me. For trespassing after being asked to leave by the property owner and refusing a lawful order from police, the older officer said. Yeah, we can. Ethan lost it. Family first, he screamed as they finally got the cuffs on his sister. You're supposed to put family first, Lauren. They walked her out in handcuffs. Ethan ran after them, crying and begging. I stood in the doorway and watched the patrol car drive away with his sister in the back, her face twisted in rage behind the glass. Ethan came back up the walkway a minute later, mascara-like streaks of tears down his cheeks, hair wild. I will never forgive you for this, he said. Never. That's my sister. That's a stranger who was stealing my stuff, I said. She wasn't stealing, she was just... She literally tried to take my laptop and iPad, I said, claiming emotional distress compensation because she got caught living in my house without permission. Because you traumatized her, he shouted. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out sharp and bitter. I traumatized her by coming home to my own house? You know what? Screw you. I'm done. We're done. The wedding is off. He stormed inside, stomped down the hall to the guest room where he'd been keeping his clothes, and started throwing things into bags with dramatic, angry movements. Hangers hit the wall. Drawers slammed. It was like watching a bad reality show, except it was my actual life. Fine by me, I said, leaning against the doorframe. He left 20 minutes later, still crying, still telling me I'd destroyed his family and I was going to regret this. I locked the door behind him, looked around at the disaster, takeout containers everywhere, his sister's junk strewn across my floor, my bathrobe crumpled on the rug, and felt a bone-deep exhaustion settle over me. Later, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. with a beer I was too tired to finish, I kept replaying the night in my head. I honestly thought that was the end of it. I had no idea it was only phase 1 of their family-first operation. The first 3 days after Ethan walked out were strangely quiet. I went to work. I came home. I cleaned up the takeout containers and washed away the smell of garlic and fried things from my living room. I stripped the couch, washed my bathrobe twice, bagged up the few things his sister had left behind, and set them on the curb with a note. Pick up by noon or goes to donation. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like it belonged to me again. By Friday night, I'd almost convinced myself that the worst was over. Ethan was gone. His sister was in jail. There was paperwork ahead, sure, but emotionally, I thought the storm had passed. I was wrong. Saturday morning, I woke up and reached for my phone. I'm not a morning person, so my brain didn't register the number right away. It just saw 89 and decided that couldn't be right. 89 unread messages. For 1 second, I thought maybe something terrible had happened, like an emergency alert. Then I opened my texts. They weren't from Ethan, not from his sister. They were from his mother. The previews told the whole story before I even tapped. How dare you have my daughter arrested? She's traumatized because of you. You will pay for her legal fees. What kind of woman does this to family? I scrolled through them, each one more unhinged than the last. Apparently, in the version of reality Ethan had sold her, I had trapped his poor sister. I had allegedly invited her to move in, then set her up to be arrested. I'd weaponized my home, my job, and apparently the police themselves specifically to hurt their family. I replied once. Your daughter trespassed in my home, refused to leave, and attempted theft while police were present. She created the situation, not me. The typing bubble appeared immediately. You manipulative girl. My son told me everything. You knew she had nowhere to go. You invited her to stay and then had her arrested out of spite. We will sue you for what you've done. I stared at that one for a long moment. There was a time when a message like that from a future mother-in-law would have crushed me. I would have written long explanations, apologized for things I didn't do, twisted myself into knots trying to win back approval. Now I just muted the thread and put the phone down. I made coffee, took a shower, tried to reclaim my Saturday. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a new number. Ethan. I didn't need to open it to know. My sister spent the night in jail, Lauren. She has court on Monday. You need to call them and drop the charges. I exhaled slowly, rubbed my temples. No, Ethan. She could get jail time. Do you understand that? Real jail? She should have thought about that before she broke the law in my house. Twice. I hate what you're doing. You're heartless. Everyone's going to know what kind of person you are. I didn't reply again. For a few hours, it was quiet. Then my phone started buzzing like a hive had exploded inside it. Notifications from social media apps. I barely touched, lit up my lock screen. Mentions, tags, comments from people I hadn't spoken to since college. It took a second to realize what was happening. Then my best friend Jenna texted me a link. You should see this. Ethan had posted a long, furious rant on Facebook and Instagram, complete with a sad-faced selfie for dramatic effect. In his version of events, I was a controlling, emotionally abusive woman who illegally evicted his innocent sister from what was basically their shared home. I had weaponized the police because I couldn't handle sharing him with his family. His sister, according to him, was a fragile victim of circumstances with nowhere else to go, and I'd thrown her out into the night out of pure cruelty. He'd written paragraphs about how I made 3 times his income, how I'd refused to help his family get back on their feet, how I cared more about a couch and some electronics than a human being. The comments. People I barely knew wrote things like, "Wow, I didn't know Lauren was like this. This is disgusting. I'm so sorry, Ethan. How could she do that to your sister?" One person wrote, "Money really changes people." I felt my throat tighten. For a second, I questioned myself. That's the worst part. How easily you can start doubting your own memory when enough people tell you you're the villain. Then Jenna called. "Don't you dare spiral," she said by way of hello. "Remember who you are and what actually happened." "I know," I said, but it came out thin. "Send me the videos," she said. "All of them, and the screenshots of the texts about you paying his sister's debt." "Jenna." "Lauren, send them." I did. 10 minutes later, she posted. Not a rant, not a counter-essay, just the facts. She uploaded the video of his sister trying to walk out of my bedroom with my laptop and iPad while I recorded her. She added screenshots of the texts where Ethan told me I was expected to help pay off his sister's $18,000 debt because that's what family does. She captioned it, "Before you decide who the villain is, maybe see the whole story." The narrative cracked in real time. Notifications started flipping. Some of the same people who had called me names were suddenly going quiet, or backpedaling, or deleting their comments. New ones appeared. Wait, she moved her in without asking? So Ethan promised Lauren's money to pay his sister's debt? Yeah, that's not it, Chief. By the end of the afternoon, Ethan had deleted his original post. Too late, screenshots live forever. For the rest of the weekend, his mother kept sending me messages, each more unhinged than the last. I didn't respond. I saved them, forwarded them to a folder, and tried to pretend my phone was just a brick with apps. On Monday morning, an unknown number called while I was at my desk. "Hello? Hi, is this Lauren Mitchell?" a measured voice asked. "Yes. This is the clerk's office from the county courthouse. We have Ethan Parker and his sister here. She has a hearing scheduled this afternoon. Your ex-fiancé is stating that you're required to be present to drop the charges. There was a time when that would have worked on me too, using an official voice, an official place, to pressure me." "Am I legally required to be there as the complainant?" I asked. "No, ma'am," the clerk said. "You're not required to attend. The case can proceed without you. He's insisting you want to rescind the complaint, but we don't have any documentation to that effect." "I do not want to rescind anything," I said. "The charges stand as filed." A pause. "Understood. I'll note that in the file. Have a good day, Ms. Mitchell." 10 minutes later, another new number flashed across my screen. I didn't answer. A text came through anyway. "Her bail is $500. You need to pay it. This is your fault." I put my phone face down on my desk and stared at my computer screen, my work email swimming in front of me. They weren't just upset. They weren't just grieving some fantasy of family solidarity. They were trying to bully me into erasing reality because it didn't suit them. I'd lived 3 years with Ethan's family-first attitude without really understanding what it meant. It had always seemed harmless. Him picking up the phone whenever his mom called, him bailing his sister out of minor messes, him dropping everything for their drama. I'd told myself it was sweet that he cared so much. Now I saw it clearly. Family first didn't mean mutual support. It meant everyone else's emergency would always outrank my boundaries, my safety, my finances. It meant my house was theirs by default. My income was theirs by right. My consent was optional if it got in the way of what they wanted. Sitting at my desk, watching my phone buzz with another angry message I didn't read, I realized something with gut-deep certainty. If I'd married Ethan, this wouldn't have been a one-time nightmare. This would have been my life. And the worst part? They still weren't done. By Tuesday evening, I'd convinced myself things might quiet down. The hearing had been held. His sister hadn't gotten bail the second time. Ethan's posts were deleted. His mother had worn herself out after sending what felt like 200 messages in 48 hours. I let my shoulders relax for the first time in days. I reheated leftover pasta, poured a glass of wine, picked a mindless cooking competition show on TV. For one blessed hour, my house felt like a home again. Then, while stirring the sauce absent-mindedly, I went to unlock my front door to check the mail and stopped because something was wrong. Deep scratches gouged the paint around my front door lock, fresh, raw, metallic dust still clinging to the frame. My stomach tightened. I stepped back, heart thudding, and went straight to my phone. I opened the security app connected to my cameras. Thank God, thank everything, that I'd installed them last year after a package theft scare. Footage loaded. I didn't breathe. There they were. At 2 in the afternoon, clear as daylight, Ethan and his sister standing on my front porch. Ethan was glancing around anxiously. His sister had a screwdriver in her hand, wedged into the lock, twisting, jamming, trying to force it. A neighbor walked out to take their trash to the curb. Ethan straightened up like a little boy caught doing something stupid. She asked something. The camera didn't record audio clearly. Ethan waved casually, laughing. Then he leaned closer to her and said, "Lauren lost her keys. Just helping her get inside." My neighbor nodded and went back inside. Ethan and his sister waited until the door shut, and his sister went right back to the lock. They gave up after 10 more minutes. Ethan stormed down the steps. His sister threw the screwdriver into the bushes and stomped after him. I watched the footage twice, a third time, a fourth. My hands shook from rage and something darker, that creeping violation, the sense of being hunted inside your own walls. I called the police. Report filed. They asked for the footage. I emailed it. They asked if I wanted a restraining order against Ethan in addition to the one I already planned for his sister. Yes, I said, absolutely. When I hung up, I changed my locks again, this time to a smart lock with a numeric code only I would know. And still that night, I slept with the hallway light on. Wednesday morning brought a new kind of absurdity. I opened my work email and found a message from a law office, an unfamiliar name. Subject formal notice. Intent to pursue civil action. I clicked it. It was a demand letter from his sister's attorney. A real letter, formatted professionally, threatening to sue me for wrongful arrest, defamation, emotional distress, violation of tenant rights, and demanding $25,000 in damages unless I agreed to settle $25,000. For a woman who had lived in my house for 5 days without permission, eaten my food, stolen my clothes, attempted to take my laptop and iPad, screamed at me, and then tried to break into my home. Twice. I forwarded it to my lawyer. He called me 2 minutes later, laughing. "Lauren," he said, still trying to catch his breath, "I've been practicing law for 15 years. This is the most ridiculous demand letter I've seen all year." "That's comforting," I said weakly. "This lawyer either didn't read your file or didn't ask a single question before agreeing to represent her. Don't respond. I'll take care of it." He drafted a response that same afternoon. A calm, razor-sharp takedown, citing video evidence, timestamps, witness statements, police reports, and legal statutes. He ended it with, "Any lawsuit filed by your client will be countersued for attempted burglary, defamation, and harassment. We suggest you advise your client to reconsider." I felt a flicker of satisfaction reading it. Maybe things would finally die down. Oh, Lauren, sweet, exhausted, naive Lauren. Wednesday night, I was flipping through Netflix when my security camera app pinged with movement at the backyard fence. My stomach dropped. I tapped open the feed. There she was, Ethan's sister, climbing over my 6-foot privacy fence, dropping into my backyard like a deranged raccoon. A moment later, she sneaked toward my back door, jiggling the handle. Locked. Then she moved to the window, took out that same screwdriver, started prying. I didn't hesitate. I called 911. "I have a trespasser attempting to break into my home right now," I whispered, as if she could somehow hear through walls. The operator stayed on the line as I watched her on my phone. The image shook because my hands were shaking. "Officers are 2 minutes out," she said. My camera showed their flashlights before I heard the sirens. They came in fast from both sides. One officer, same younger woman from before, drew her weapon and shouted commands. His sister froze, dropped the screwdriver, then tried to run. Bad idea. They tackled her 10 feet from my back door. Arrest number 2, criminal trespass, attempted burglary, violation of the no-contact order. This time the judge denied bail, called her a flight risk and a repeat offender. By the time the police knocked on my front door to give me the update, I was wrapped in a blanket, shaking, trying to breathe. "Ma'am," the officer said gently, "you did the right thing calling us." I nodded. But inside something cracked. That home, the sanctuary I'd built for myself, didn't feel safe anymore. They hadn't just disrespected me. They had declared war. Thursday morning, while I was sipping lukewarm coffee and staring blankly at my laptop, the Ring doorbell chimed. I checked the camera. Ethan. Hair messy, shirt wrinkled, eyes wild. He started pounding on the door. Lauren, open the door! I didn't move. Lauren, he pounded harder. She's in jail because of you. They're keeping her this time. What the hell is wrong with you? I tapped the microphone and spoke through the speaker. Do not come to my home uninvited. You are violating a no-contact order. I don't care, he shouted. You ruined my sister's life. You're destroying our family. I stared at him through the screen. He looked like a stranger. She tried to break into my house. Twice, I said. That's why she's in jail. That's her responsibility, not mine. You could have stopped it, he screamed. You could have forgiven her. We were supposed to be a family. I exhaled slowly. Ethan, I'm done. Leave my property. He froze. Then the rage drained out of his face, replaced by something smaller, something weaker. His shoulders fell. She just wanted her stuff, he said quietly. You wouldn't give it back. What stuff? I snapped. She was here for 5 days. Everything she left behind, I put on the curb the next day. It's been gone for a week. He stared, confused, maybe embarrassed. But he didn't apologize. Of course he didn't. He just shook his head and stomped back down the steps, muttering to himself, You'll regret this. You'll see. You will regret this. When he reached the sidewalk, he turned and threw one last furious look at my house. Then he got in his car and drove off. I watched him disappear. Then I double-checked every lock in my house. Then I cried. Not because I missed him, because I finally understood just how deep this nightmare went, and how far they were willing to go to pull me into it. And the worst part? This wasn't even close to over. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for things to go from chaotic to surreal, like I had fallen into some alternate universe where logic didn't apply and people behaved according to rules only they understood. By the time those 14 days were over, I was no longer just dealing with a breakup and a deranged sister-in-law-to-be. I was dealing with a coordinated campaign. A family with one mission. Destroy me or drag me down with them. The first time I realized things had escalated beyond anything I'd imagined was the Wednesday after the second arrest. That morning, after Ethan's meltdown on my porch, I woke up to a pounding headache and the kind of exhaustion that can only come from weeks of living on adrenaline. I dragged myself out of bed, made coffee, checked my email, and my heart stopped. Because there it was, a message from a police department liaison notifying me that a no-contact order had officially been filed for both Ethan and his sister after the break-in attempt. A judge had approved it in record time, thanks to the video footage and the officer's reports. For a moment, I felt safe. Briefly. It lasted about 4 hours. At 10:17 a.m., my receptionist pinged me over Teams. Lauren? There's a woman in the lobby asking for you. She's very loud. I froze. No way. Not here. I hurried down the hallway, heart pounding, adrenaline spiking. When I stepped into the lobby, my worst fear materialized. His sister, standing dead center in the room, hair wild, eyes swollen, wearing sweatpants and the same hoodie she'd had on the night she tried to break into my house. Her ankle monitor glowed under the hem. 2 security guards flanked her, trying to calm her down while employees watched from behind the reception desk. There she is, she screamed when she saw me. There's the psycho who ruined my life. Every conversation in the room died instantly. I didn't walk closer. I didn't say a word. I simply lifted my hand and pointed toward the guards. I have a no-contact order against her, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My voice shook, but it didn't waver. My boss was already dialing 911. His sister thrashed against the guard's grip. You're going to pay for what you did to me. I lost my job. I lost everything because of you. My boss stepped beside me, blocking half my body from her view. Ma'am, he said sternly, you need to stop. She didn't. The police arrived in minutes. Arrest number 3. Violation of a protective order. This time the officers were done being patient. There was no talking her down, no warnings. They cuffed her right there in the lobby while she screamed my name and sobbed and kicked at the floor. Employees stared at me like I was the eye of a tornado. When the doors closed behind her, my boss turned to me, voice gentle. Take the rest of the day off, Lauren. I nodded, numb. As I walked out of the office building, I realized something terrifying. They weren't going to stop, not because they believed they were right, but because they believed I owed them. My home, my money, my forgiveness, my entire life. And they were furious that I refused. The next day brought a different kind of madness. At 8 a.m., I got a knock on my door from a pair of police officers, different from the ones who arrested the sister. Ma'am, the male officer said politely, we received a report yesterday claiming you're withholding the property of your ex-partner. I blinked. A beat passed. Then I laughed. laughed in sheer disbelief. "Come in," I said. "You can search the entire house." They did. 20 minutes later, the younger officer approached me with an apologetic expression. "Ma'am, we found nothing indicating any jewelry, cash, or designer items listed in the report. We also reviewed your security footage from the day your ex moved out. It shows him leaving with all his belongings." I shrugged. "She's inventing things she never owned because she's angry." He nodded. "People file retaliatory reports sometimes because they're emotional or embarrassed." Then he paused. "You could file your own report for the false claim, though it may or may not go anywhere." "I'll document it," I said, "and give everything to my attorney." When they left, I locked the door and just stood there for a moment. Not sad, not scared, just furious. A kind of cold, simmering fury that comes from being pushed too hard, too far, for too long. I wasn't the fragile one anymore. I wasn't the person crumbling under the weight of their chaos. I was done being a target. The universe must have sensed my shift in energy, because that afternoon, justice threw me a curveball that almost made me smile. I was in my office catching up on work when I got a text from one of our mutual friends. "Oh my God, Lauren, did you hear?" "What now?" "Ethan's sister got fired. Today." I stared at the message. Apparently, after being arrested in my workplace lobby, she'd been charged with violating her no-contact order, and her employer found out. She lost her job on the spot. A tiny sliver of guilt flickered in me, and died just as quickly. Because her job loss wasn't my doing, it was hers. Her choices, her actions, her consequences. Something she and her family had never learned. But the pièce de résistance, the moment everything crystallized, came after lunch. I got a call from my lawyer. His tone was amused in that dangerous way attorneys sometimes get when someone hands them a legal gift. "Lauren," he said, "you'll love this. Your ex-fiancé's mother hired a new attorney, a more aggressive one." "Oh, good," I sighed. "What now?" "They're alleging you illegally evicted Ethan," he said, "claiming he had established residency in your home because he'd lived there for over a year. They want $15,000 for emotional distress, moving expenses, and loss of housing." I burst out laughing, not hysterically, just in disbelief. "Residency?" I said. "He never paid rent. He didn't contribute to utilities. He had a drawer, half a drawer." "I already sent a rebuttal," my lawyer said, with timestamps of him packing his belongings, the video of him storming out voluntarily, and documentation proving he was never on your lease, deed, or utilities. "And?" The attorney immediately backed down, he said, sounding disappointed the fight ended too quickly. "They'll likely try something else, but legally, they have nothing." Nothing. They had nothing. Except rage, entitlement, delusions, and a rapidly shrinking circle of people willing to enable them. The final blow came that weekend. Ethan's sister's court date. I had to testify. The courtroom was small, packed with people waiting for their cases. When I walked in, I saw them immediately. Ethan seated next to his mother, both looking like they'd aged 10 years. His mother glared at me with a hatred so venomous it almost felt comical. His sister was escorted in, wearing a county-issued jumpsuit and cuffs. Her attorney tried everything. She believed she had a right to reside in the home. She was invited by a household member. She reasonably assumed. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor," she said, "we have video footage of the defendant attempting to steal electronics, of her breaking into the home, of her climbing the fence, of her violating a no-contact order at the complainant's workplace." The judge watched the clip silently, rubbed his forehead, then looked at the sister with exhaustion, not anger. "Guilty," he said, "on all charges." Sentencing. 30 days in jail, time served counted. 60 days probation. $1,500 in fines. Mandatory restitution to me. $800 for upgraded security, $350 for locksmith services. When the judge finished, Ethan's sister burst into tears. His mother started shouting, "This is unfair. She's a victim. She's—" "Ma'am," the judge said sharply, "one more word and I will hold you in contempt." She froze. I didn't look at Ethan, because at that point there was nothing left to see. Outside the courtroom, as I was leaving with my lawyer, Ethan tried to approach me. He looked wrecked, worn down, smaller. "Lauren," he started. My lawyer stepped directly in front of me. "My client has nothing to say to you," he said calmly. "Further contact will result in a restraining order against you as well." Ethan's jaw clenched. His voice cracked. "You ruined her life." I didn't break stride. I didn't look back. "She ruined her own life," my lawyer said over his shoulder. "Have a good day." As the courthouse doors swung shut behind us, I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for weeks. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, I realized something powerful. I was winning. 3 days after the court hearing, the one where Ethan's sister was sentenced and his mother nearly earned herself a contempt charge, I thought things might finally taper off. That's the kind of optimism that only comes from exhaustion, not hope. Because by the end of that week, their entitlement would hit a level I still struggle to describe without laughing or swearing. Possibly both. The first sign that things weren't done came late Saturday morning. I was cleaning out the guest room, formerly Ethan's unofficial storage space, soon to become my very official home office, when my phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. Given the last few weeks, I answered cautiously. Hello? A pause, then a shaky voice. Lauren, this is Karen Parker? Ethan's mother. My spine stiffened, breath slowing. How did you get this number? I have my ways, she said sharply, as if she wanted me to imagine some dramatic espionage sequence instead of what probably happened, her bothering mutual acquaintances until one caved. She sniffed loudly, then launched into her speech without waiting. I hope you're happy. My daughter is in jail because of you. My son is suffering. Our family is broken. My eyes drifted to the freshly cleared bookshelf. Ma'am, your daughter is in jail because she committed crimes. You could have stopped this, she snapped. You could have forgiven her. You could have talked to us. Instead, you ruined everything. I enforced boundaries, I said plainly. That's not the same thing. You destroyed my family, I sighed. Your family destroyed itself. There was a sharp inhale on her end, like I'd stabbed her with a sentence. This isn't over, she whispered. We're pursuing other avenues. Please direct all communication through my attorney. I hung up. I immediately blocked the number. Then I made a note to change my own number that weekend. But the mother wasn't the only one planning a new avenue. That afternoon, while I was reorganizing my closet, my phone pinged with a message request on Instagram from someone I hadn't seen or spoken to in 8 years. A girl I used to work with in my mid-20s, barely an acquaintance. Her message. Hey, Ethan reached out. He said he's worried about you and asked if I could talk to you. Are you okay? Maybe you two could work it out? I stared at it. That pit deep in my stomach twisted. Ethan had gone through his old contacts, people I hadn't spoken to in years, digging for anyone who might reach me indirectly. Like a spider casting webs everywhere, hoping something would stick. I didn't respond to her. I simply blocked her and tightened my privacy settings until my profile might as well have been a brick wall. But it didn't stop there. 2 days later, while waiting for my coffee at a local cafe, someone tapped my shoulder. A woman I vaguely recognized, someone who used to be in Ethan's friend circle. She cleared her throat nervously. Lauren, hi. Ethan asked me to talk to you. I blinked. Why would he think that would work? She shrugged helplessly. He said you two had a misunderstanding, and since you're both good people— A misunderstanding? I repeated, incredulous. He moved his sister into my home without permission. Then she committed multiple felonies. The woman's eyes widened. Oh, he didn't say all that. Of course he didn't, I said, grabbing my coffee. Please tell him never to contact me again. I left the cafe. Blocked her too. But the real fallout, Ethan's internal collapse, came not from strangers or acquaintances. It came from someone who'd actually mattered to us both, one of our closest mutual friends. She messaged me privately. Lauren, I need to warn you. Ethan is telling people you fabricated everything, that the videos are edited, that the police were biased, that his sister is being targeted because of you. I exhaled slowly, my patience thinning to a thread. This wasn't delusion anymore. This was desperation. A drowning man dragging anyone he could reach under the surface. But she wasn't done. His family thinks they can overturn the sentencing if they prove you're unstable or vindictive. They're trying to compile statements. I laughed out loud. Not kindly. Not in disbelief. But in that dark, bitter way you laugh when someone says something so absurd you can't help yourself. Let them compile whatever they want, I wrote back. I have the truth, the videos, the police reports, the dates, the protective orders, the court transcripts. I know, she replied. I just wanted you to be aware. And I was, painfully aware. If their behavior had been entitled before, it had now calcified into something more dangerous. A belief that consequences were unfair simply because they applied to them. But the universe, as always, had impeccable comedic timing. Because the exact same afternoon, I got another message. This one from another former mutual friend. I don't know if this helps or makes things worse, but I found out the real reason Ethan moved his sister into your place. I froze, hands hovering over the keyboard. He continued. Her debt wasn't 18K, it was more like 35K. She maxed out multiple cards buying designer stuff, defaulted, and the collectors were after her. She wasn't between apartments, she was hiding. Hiding. Everything clicked at once. Ethan hadn't moved her in because she was struggling and needed family. He'd moved her in because she needed a safe house. A place where debt collectors couldn't reach her. A place her name wasn't tied to. A place with a financially stable homeowner who could bail her out if things escalated. A place where the Parker family thought they could plant themselves and grow roots without contributing a single thing. A place that was supposed to become mine and Ethan's home after marriage. My future home. My finances. My life. All of it was supposed to become theirs. Once that realization hit me, any leftover empathy I had evaporated like steam. This wasn't just boundary crossing. This wasn't just entitlement. This was predatory. Calculated. And I had dodged a bullet bigger than anything I'd ever seen coming. The following week was the slow unwinding of the entire Parker family delusion. The sister was transported to county jail to finish her 30-day sentence. Ethan moved back in with his mother. She was not thrilled. Mutual acquaintances reported back. He lost his job. He can't afford to move out. His mom is demanding he pay rent now. His sister might owe restitution she can't pay. Consequences were hitting them one by one, like dominoes. But not because of me, because of their choices. And the irony? For all the screaming Ethan had done about family first, once things got hard, his family couldn't even hold themselves together. They were fracturing under the weight of their own behavior. And me? I was finally breathing again. Therapy helped. Friends helped. Reclaiming my home helped. But most of all, knowing the truth helped. I wasn't the villain in their story. I was the boundary they crashed into when they pushed too far. Still, the story wasn't over yet. There was one final confrontation left. One last emotional reckoning. One final piece of closure. And it came 6 weeks after the night I came home and found 2 women in my clothes on my couch. 6 weeks after the first trespassing. 6 weeks after everything fell apart. It came when Ethan himself, broken, desperate, finally out of excuses, made one last attempt to rewrite our story. And that final moment changed everything. 6 weeks. 6 weeks since I walked into my own home and found 2 women I barely knew, wearing my clothes, eating my food, and treating my space like it belonged to them. 6 weeks since Ethan screamed family first, while his sister was escorted out in handcuffs. 6 weeks since I watched my future unravel in real time and realized it was actually salvation. Most of the dust had settled. His sister was deep into her 30-day sentence, reportedly miserable and furious at everyone but herself. Ethan had moved back in with his mother, who was now overwhelmed by both of her unemployed adult children and their chaos. I had expected radio silence by this point. I'd blocked every number, locked down every account, told every mutual friend not to pass messages along. But chaos has a way of making one last desperate reach before it dies. And on a quiet Thursday evening, I got mine. I had just finished assembling a new bookshelf for my freshly redecorated home office. The guest room was officially no longer a place for anyone but me, when I heard a soft knock at the door. Not pounding, not frantic, a hesitant, uneven rhythm. I checked the camera. Ethan, alone. He looked nothing like the man I'd dated for 3 years. His hair was a mess, his clothes wrinkled, his shoulders slumped like life had been kicking him in slow motion. For a moment, a small moment, I felt something like pity, habit maybe, muscle memory from the days when his emotions were still my concern. But then I remembered who he'd been when things mattered. I answered through the speaker. "You're violating the no-contact order. Leave." He flinched at my tone, at the coldness of it. "Lauren, please," he said, looking directly into the camera. "I'm not here to fight. I need to talk to you, please." "No, just listen for a second," his voice cracked. "I don't have anyone to talk to." "You have your mother," I said. His smile, sad, broken, barely formed. "She's tired of me," he said quietly, "and of my sister, and of everything. She said I should fix my own messes for once. She's not wrong." I said nothing. He shifted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I lost my job." "I know." "How?" he asked, stunned. "People talk," I said. "Actions have consequences." He swallowed hard. "I can't find a new one," he whispered. "My manager told me off the record that HR flagged my file because of the domestic-related police reports." He looked like a child when he said it, like someone waiting for reassurance. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Ethan," I said, "you chose to insert me into your family's dysfunction, then expected me to pay for it. Your sister committed crimes, multiple ones. You tried to break into my home, twice. You lied to people about me. You harassed me. You let your mother harass me. You made a campaign out of painting me as the villain. I know, he burst out, the words raw. I know. That's why I'm here. I need to apologize. I need to explain. I didn't respond. He took a shaky breath. When my sister called me, crying about her debt, when the collectors showed up at my mom's, she said she had nowhere else to go. She told me if she didn't get out of the apartment, they'd take her car. She said she'd hurt herself if she didn't get help. His eyes shimmered. I panicked, he whispered. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just thought, I can put her in Lauren's house. Lauren's stable. Lauren's calm. Lauren has money. Lauren can fix this. There it was. The truth. Not the sanitized version he posted online. Not the defensive version he screamed at officers. Not the victim story he fed his mother. The real belief at the center of everything. Lauren can fix this. Because that had always been my role. The emotionally competent one. The rational one. The one who paid bills on time, handled crises, and kept things together. He had mistaken my strength for an invitation to take advantage. I know it wasn't fair, he said, wiping his eyes. And I know I ruined everything. But I'm begging you, can't we just talk? Not to get back together. Not to blame you. I need someone who knew me before all this. Someone who remembers I'm not this. He gestured at himself. Broken. Tired. Lost. For a moment, the air outside seemed to still. The cicadas quieted. The world held its breath, waiting for my answer. And I felt something shift inside me. Not sympathy, not anger, not vindication. Clarity. I finally understood that the man standing on my porch, the man I had once imagined a future with, had never actually seen me as a partner. He had seen me as stability, as structure, as a resource, as a solution. Someone who could fill in all the cracks in his life. Someone who could absorb his family's chaos. Someone who could hold everything he couldn't. Someone who could save him from himself. But I wasn't his foundation. I was his lifeline, and he'd mistaken my love for obligation. I leaned toward the speaker. You're right, I said quietly. I did know you before all this. His eyes lit up, just a flicker. And that's exactly why I can't let you back into my life now. His face fell. You don't need a partner, I continued. You need a grown man who can stand on his own feet. You need therapy, boundaries, accountability. Things you never had to develop because people, especially women, always bailed you out. I'm trying, he whispered. I know, I said, but I'm not your safety net. I'm not your fixer, and I'm not responsible for cleaning up what you and your sister created. His lips trembled. It's over, Ethan. It's been over. And the only thing left for you to do is respect the no-contact order and get help. He nodded slowly, defeated, deflated. A man finally realizing there were consequences for treating love like a ladder he could climb and discard. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. For a second, I believed him. But apologies don't equal change. Goodbye, Ethan, I said. He lingered for a moment, as if hoping I'd open the door, as if hoping I'd say just one word to pull him back. I didn't. Eventually, he turned and walked down the driveway, slowly, shoulders slumped, disappearing into the night. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt peace. The weeks that followed were silent, gloriously, beautifully silent. His sister completed her sentence and moved 3 states away to live with a distant cousin, someone who hadn't yet learned what the Parkers were like up close. Ethan stayed with his mother for a while, then moved out again when she demanded rent. Last I heard, he was couch hopping and working on himself, whatever that meant. His mother sent one last demand letter through a lawyer, quickly shut down by mine, and then stopped completely. My home became mine again. I replaced the couch, painted the guest room, organized my newly renovated office, opened the windows without checking the cameras first. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just dinners, laughter, the simple reminder that healthy men exist, and that I deserved one. But the biggest change wasn't external, it was internal. Because surviving the Parker family didn't just teach me about boundaries or safety or red flags. It taught me the difference between family first and self-respect always. It taught me how quickly love can turn into entitlement when you ignore the signs. It taught me that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. And above all, it taught me that you don't truly know someone until they're faced with their own consequences. Do I regret calling the police that first night? No. Hell no. That one decision saved me from a lifetime tied to people who would have drained my finances, my home, my stability, and my sanity. It wasn't the end of my world. It was the beginning of a better one. One where I choose who gets access to my life. One where chaos is not welcome. Where peace is normal, not a luxury. One where the only family first I honor is the family I choose intentionally. The family I build someday with someone who respects me, someone who sees me not as a solution, but as a partner. Someone who will never ask me to sacrifice my safety, my home, or my dignity for theirs. Until then, it's just me, my rules, my name on the deed, my peace. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough.